Hello, and welcome to The Conversation, a series in which I speak with people involved in amazing ministries here in Ireland and beyond. In this episode, I will be speaking with Father Brian Kavanagh from ALMAS Worldwide, a charity established to help children who are living in and suffering from poverty and whose families are affected by HIV/AIDS. Father Brian Kavanagh from ALMAS, you're very welcome to The Conversation.
Thank you.
Father Brian, tell me about ALMAS.
ALMAS is a charity that the Lord actually led me to set up. It happened in 2003. And the charity was initially set up to help children affected and suffering from AIDS. Now, the charity actually had no name until I went to Ethiopia in 2003, stayed with Mother Teresa's sisters. And I heard a story from one of the sisters about the young girl Almas who was in the orphanage, died of AIDS, but her name means precious pearl. And as a result of that, I said, that's going to be the name of the charity.
And what does the charity actually do?
The charity reaches out, first of all, to help children affected by AIDS and then also poverty. And that means responding to their survival needs and supporting their families, providing water, food, shelter, then moving into education and also health, responding to their health needs as well.
It seems to me that the support that you give these children and these local initiatives equips them to be like standalone in their own communities, to give back to their communities, whether that's through a water project, through a particular health project, or through a simple community project like a bakery.
Well, if you can imagine children in their families, first of all, they need food, they need shelter, they need clothing. Then we can talk about providing education and giving them education. So we've been supporting children in education, like literally from the age of 4 up to 17, 18, when the equivalent of Leaving Cert here in Ireland, but then also into college and university. So these people are being empowered and they're being given an opportunity to have a life where their parents probably have always lived in poverty.
Father Brian, tell me a little bit more about Almas, because obviously her life story, her story of self-sacrifice must have spoken to you very strongly.
Sure. When I heard the story on March the 3rd, 2003. I was in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, and I asked the nun, had she ever worked with children with AIDS? And she said, oh yes, she said, she was in the first house in Addis Ababa that took in the first child who was diagnosed HIV positive. And that girl lived with them for 13 years. She died at the age of 14 on the 3rd of March 2002. And of course I asked the nun what was her name. Her name was ALMAS. And what did that word mean? It's the local word for precious pearl. And as a result of that, I said, that's the name of the charity, because every child is a precious pearl. And Almas then, this nun knew Almas personally and was with her actually at the time of her death. And as she was telling Almas' story, she mentioned a boy called Itael. And it's a name I never forgot. And as a result of that, I always had in my heart, if I could really meet Itael, because he'd be the human connection with Almas. So, in actual fact, 6 months later, in 2003, I actually met Itael, not by, God organized it. So Itael actually told me an awful lot about Almas. So Almas was only 1 year old when she was brought into the office, first orphan kid. But as she got older, she began to mind the babies that were coming in. And by the time she died at the age of 14, she was minding maybe 3 children, and all the older girls in the orphanage would say, this is my baby, I'm minding this baby. And so the last child she minded was Itael. And the message that she gave to him, I think she actually lived by that message herself. She said to Itael, be good on your own, be good in your life, and be strong on your own. And he told me that before she died, she used to always give her sweets, her food, or extra food to any of the other children. So she was so generous. And Itael has that same quality. And, while her name her name really touched my heart, like precious pearl. But knowing that about her, like at the age of 14, she was that generous and that kind and that loving in the orphanage, in a situation like in Ethiopia, where life was so difficult. And here the charity reaching out to children, inspiring me to in terms of that gift of generosity to the poor, and she herself has led the way.
And her spirit of self-sacrifice and her example, obviously, and her impact on others must have spoken to you very strongly.
Yeah.
Because certainly, you know, since that time in 2003, you're now have worked in 25 different countries worldwide. Take us on that journey on how on earth, from a simple example of one person and their huge heroic self-sacrifice and generosity, that manifested itself in various different projects throughout the world.
Sure. The story of ALMAS for me and the charity work as a charity, Jesus has led it all. So I came home in March, that first year, 2003. We set up the charity officially. By November, I was back out there, this time for 3 weeks. And very significant because, you know, the charity, God had given the charity the name. I had surrendered the charity to him because I thought it was mine initially. In June of that year, I was kind of wondering, how am I going to fundraise for the charity and what will I do? And in my prayer, the Lord said to me, Brian, in my heart, Brian, this is not your charity. And I said, oh my goodness gracious, I thought like all that I had done. But then I realized, no, all of these children that the charity is helping and has helped, all those children belong to him. And they belong to Our Lady, because Jesus gave us Mary, behold your mother. All those children belong to Our Lady and to Jesus. Therefore, yes, the charity belongs to Jesus. So I'm back out there in November. And I have this tendency when, you know, special times, I'd say, ask the Holy Spirit for a page of the gospel, just to reflect on, like, while I was in Ethiopia, right? And I just paused and pondered and opened myself to the power of the Spirit. And the Holy Spirit gave me a page in Mark's Gospel. And it was, you can imagine, I'm going to the page, there's 57 at the time, and my Bible. And lo and behold, every passage in that page spoke to me. One being, the rich man wants to gain eternal life and asked Jesus, what must I do? And then eventually it was, you must sell what you have and give your money to the poor. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't giving any of my personal finances, my money, to the charity. And as a result of that, I came home from that event, from that time in Ethiopia, and I said, I'm going to set up my direct debit to the charity. Now, while I was there also, I realized that the only motivation for ALMAS is love. Love. And the gospel story that really came to my heart was the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan inspired by love. And it's not easy. I find it quite, heart-rending when I go to these countries and I see the poverty. And yet, I come home and I'm really joyful because I said, isn't it wonderful that the charity ALMAS, through the money, through financing the projects, it's helping all these poor. Even though I'm living in the lap of luxury in comparison to the poor in Ireland. But the money that ALMAS is sending to these countries is bringing it's pure love. And, one of the chapters, the way we say Luke's Gospel chapter 15 is the mercy chapter. Well, I call Luke chapter 16 the money chapter. And in that chapter, the one line that really, really struck me was this. Jesus said to the people, use money, that tainted thing, to gain yourself friends, so that when it fails you, they will welcome you into eternity. And I said, oh my goodness, here, by being generous to the poor, this is me as well, to be generous to the poor. They themselves, one day, will welcome me into eternity. So the Good Samaritan, to be inspired by love, to be driven by love, that makes all the difference. So as a result, as we heard it, so I was led by love all the time. So we went from Ethiopia to Zambia, through the Presentation Sisters. Then I ended up going to helping a woman, and we're still helping this woman 16 years later in a shanty town outside Virginia, Johannesburg, Virginia, in South Africa. And she's reaching out. I was there twice, and it's shocking, really. Right? But she goes in there all the time, and she's now set up 6 food kitchens that ALMAS is sponsoring for the last 16 years. And then we went from there to Nigeria. We went from Nigeria to India. We went to India to Pakistan. But I actually didn't go looking for any of these countries. People found out about ALMAS, inquired. So we have water projects, health projects, food projects, clothes projects, education projects, all out of love. And where I say, Lord, wherever you want me to go, wherever you want ALMAS to go, we'll go. And all the children belong to Our Lady and to Jesus, so we go wherever. They're in charge. So I don't take holidays anymore. I go on my ALMAS journeys. But then I do say to people, my life is one long spiritual working holiday. So I'm on holiday all the time. And motivated by love, strengthened by love, then I go to these places, I meet the people, I see the projects, and like, when I was in Uganda about 4 years ago, I was actually embarrassed because they treated me as if like I was like God or a king. Right? And I was saying, no. I'm just one of many people who support the work of ALMAS, who out of their generosity makes it possible for ALMAS to do and to help you in the way you're being helped. And it's all about, this is God's love reaching out to the poor.
And just to benchmark again that when you're talking about the nature of your work, the parable of the Good Samaritan, it almost also speaks to the day of judgment where our Lord, separates the sheep from the goats, because he does say that, when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. So I do think, that's very much the heart and the inspiration of your Good Samaritan story.
I see that that's faith in action. We're called to have that relationship with the Lord in our lives of prayer, our lives of reading the scripture, reading the Gospels in a particular way, like that personal relationship with Jesus. But that relationship must be lived out concretely. And, the most concrete way we can do that, and I can do that, and ALMAS has transformed my life, right, personally, because ALMAS, that charity, and the girl ALMAS has really challenged me to be conscious of the poor and to be generous to the poor. And as they say, the clothing, the food, the water, ALMAS is doing it, right? Now, ALMAS is doing it, and so many people who support the work of ALMAS through the prayer and through financial donations, that makes it possible. And I truly believe that these people will welcome us into eternity. Now, a lovely story in terms of the people who support ALMAS in Ireland. When I was working in East Wall at the time when the charity started, and I kept in contact with the community ever since I've left there, and I'm now working in North Kildare. And one of the women who was she was the centre figure for ALMAS support friends in East Wall. And 10 days before she died, she got a stroke. But you know what? She actually died on the 4th of March, which is ALMAS's anniversary. I said to myself, oh my goodness gracious, what a day to pass from this life into eternity, to meet the very girl that she herself was supporting through her response to the poor.
Beautiful, beautiful. Father Brian, we're going to take a break just now, but we'll see you back in a few minutes when we will hear more about ALMAS Worldwide. Welcome back to the conversation, where in this episode I'm speaking with Father Brian Kavanagh from ALMAS Worldwide. Father Brian, before the break we were talking about faith in action projects that ALMAS carries out. There are two that stick out in my mind. The one about little baby Frankie from Cameroon, and the other Itayel from Ethiopia. Can you tell us more about those two different wonderful young lives that you helped shape?
I think the story of Frankie in Cameroon is amazing, because when you actually see the photograph of poor Frankie, like he was totally emaciated. He was dying, the little baby. And through ALMAS, through good food and medication, within 6 months, Sister Ewa sent me a photograph, a completely transformed child. And that's the amazing thing about ALMAS, like food, the basics, the food, the water, the hygiene, clothing, and the baby's life is totally transformed. The story of Vital is an amazing story because the fact that he knew ALMAS, and every time in 2003 and 2006 when I was in Ethiopia visiting the orphanage, without me asking, I actually met him, which really touched my heart. So much so that on the second occasion, he actually stayed with me for 2 hours, sat beside me for 2 hours, watching the acrobats that were performing in the orphanage. And for some strange reason, like, he never went anywhere else. Like, he didn't know me. I couldn't talk to him because I had no Amharic. And yet here he sat with me, and we have photographs of him sitting beside me. And by the way, I look much younger when you see those photographs. But then I'd been to Ethiopia every 2 years from that time onwards, out to the orphanage every time, never saw him, never met him, and I never knew whether he was still alive or not. But in 2017, I was out again, visited the orphanage, and the sisters had changed. They didn't know the story about ALMAS. So I said, sure, I'll tell him the story about ALMAS. And then I mentioned, by the way, the last child ALMAS minder was Etal. And with that, the sister said, Etal, he's outside doing music practice with the children in the church. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it, like he was still alive. And the nun could see that I was very touched. So Etal came in eventually anyway, and we renewed our connection. But about 3 days later, we met up. And he told me this story that because his life was so difficult, he was really struggling. And financially he was really struggling, and he wasn't even able to get to school because he couldn't afford to take a shower. That was how bad it was for him. So with that, he said, lovely, he said, I was praying to the Virgin Mary for somebody to help me. And with that, I said to him, Etal, you don't have to worry anymore. I'll help you, and ALMAS will help you. And from then on, he was able to go to school every day. He was the only child from the orphanage that actually got a place in university. And in university, he wanted to study business and management, but university gave him, he studied psychology. And now he is presently teaching in Addis Ababa English and music. And his life has been just totally transformed. And he has visited Ireland a couple of times. I call him my adopted son. So, and he knows that. And he lives a life of love, like be strong on your own and be good in your life. He's still doing that, and that's his life.
And it's a perfect example, isn't it, of how, through prayer and support, that someone can be, rescued from that huge deprivation, assisted with their needs in terms of food and clothing, but then education, but ultimately contributing to their own community then, through being a teacher, as I understand, is he teaching in his own area?
Yeah, and he's also, like, he plays music in the local church. He loves Mother Teresa, right? Saint Therese. And what do you call it? He sends me WhatsApp now. We're in communication now for the last 5 years and regularly WhatsApping each other, and he will send me many spiritual messages. So for him, it's his faith is alive, that spiritual message is alive, reaching out to the poor. So he himself wants to reach out to the poor. I kind of hinted to him, would he not come and maybe work in Ireland? No. Even though our life in Ireland is 1,000 times better than Ethiopia, no. He wants to do it in his own country, reaching out to the poor.
And I think one of the reasons I'm trying to stress the personal side, the human side of the stories, one can often get lost, and here's a project for the sinking of a well, here's a health-related project. But, behind every one of these initiatives that you're doing are the ordinary people.
When I was in Uganda, right, and word got out that we were there, word got out among younger people who were in secondary school, even in college, and one chap travelled from Kampala to the village to talk to me and to ask me, could we continue to support him in his education? And we said yes, but there was a condition. And the condition was that during the summer, he would return to his village and he would help and educate, teach younger little children English or reading or maths or something small that he would be able to do. So give something back as well. So, and another girl, she was studying agricultural science. And the agreement, we sponsored that, and the agreement was that she would come back and pass some of that information on to the local farmers so that they could now actually grow different crops in order to support their own families. So we're really trying to empower people. We see the education, the work of ALMAS as empowering people into helping their own community.
I understand 25 countries you've so positively done your work in so far. Any one of those stick out in terms of significance or in terms of favourite projects?
Well, I mean, I'd have to say Ethiopia to begin with, because that's where the name was given to charity. ETILE is still there. We are actually, at the moment, we're actually sponsoring an education and food project for 230 children in Ethiopia. I suppose another, we're supporting the Sisters of the Cross in Calcutta and the connection with Mother Teresa there. But there's a powerful story there because this group of sisters live right beside the slum area. And there are many slum areas in Calcutta. So we went in one day and we were there and it was just horrendous. And so the sisters wanted to buy some building that they could use as the place from which they could help the poor. The destitute, right? So, to cut a long story short, we bought a 3-story building. And in that building, the sisters are feeding the children, educating the children, supporting their mothers, and also giving counselling and health projects, all in the one building. And I just say, it's like the Mater Private Hospital in Dublin transferred to Calcutta, where the people living in the slums, they can come to this place and they will get their treatment, their help and support, which all of the other people would be going to the public hospitals and would really be struggling. So I think of that event, but then I also think of like the two recent events in projects in Nigeria, where we sank a well, and I just couldn't get my head around the fact that people were still drawing water from an outdoor pond. And the infections as a result of all of that. And ALMAS sponsored the sinking of a well 110 metres deep, and now the water is flowing from a tap, which I take for granted every day of my life, just turn on the tap. For them, this is an amazing, like it's a miracle for them. And the same with the bakery. Poor people in a rural area of Nigeria, able to have bread in the morning, which, I just take it for granted. But then, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. So it's deeper. So it's empowering people to create a new life and a better life for themselves.
Now, just talk a little bit more about the bakery. It's a project I'm familiar with. It seems quite simple, and so it is, but a powerful, powerful idea.
It was actually a nun, a Nigerian sister, studying in Maynooth University, met me, heard about ALMAS, told me the story, and she herself then sponsored the training of one man from that community to go to the local city and did a 6-month training course in baking. So he then came home, but out of poverty, they would never been able to afford to build a bakery. So ALMAS sponsored that. So for the first production of bread, it was given to all of the local people poor, all the people free of charge. And any time that, poverty is poverty, they'll give a little, they'll pay what they can for the bread. But if another family could be in dire straits, the bread is free. And I would say to Sister Agnes in Maynooth, look, whatever way we can help in other ways, we'll also continue doing that, right? So it's like, give us this day our daily bread. That's what the Eucharist is. But in some sense, without the daily bread of the physical nourishment, the daily bread of the Eucharist, how does one live on that alone? No, one does not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. So you have the two things working together. And these faith communities, and in this area in Nigeria, to be a Christian, to be a Catholic, it takes great courage, because it's amazing pressure and torture and very difficult out there at the moment.
Father, I know that you've done this wonderful work in the 25 countries to date. But I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg, is it? Like in terms of, you know, where do you see ALMAS going in terms of the need?
Yeah. So it's like I'm always inspired by Mother Teresa saying, you know, when she was reaching out to the poor, it's only a drop in the ocean, but it's an important drop. Like every child that ALMAS supports and sponsors and helps every family, that's an important drop in the ocean. And you know, there will be no end to ALMAS. Right? Some people say to me, how long will you be in this for now, Father? And I'd say, well, this is my life. This is as Mother Teresa herself described her call to the poor. She said, this is my call within my call. A call within the call. She was a teaching nun. Now she became a nun reaching out to the poor. I'm a diocesan priest. I'll always be a diocesan priest, but this was a personal call, and I'll be reaching out to the poor till the day I die. And the poor, as Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you. But like just as the apostles were responding to the needs of the poor in his time, Jesus wants us to reach out to the poor today, and remembering whatever you did to one of these, the least of my brothers, you did it to me. So for me to remember, every time I send out financial help to the people in the countries, I'm actually sending out to Christ himself. He's in the poor. And so that gives me great joy. This is love in action, this is faith in action, and but it's ongoing. So I don't expect that the work of ALMAS will ever be completed, and it'll always be a challenge for me to make sure that whatever I'm doing for ALMAS, I'm doing it out of love.
Father, for those people listening to this program and watching it, where is the best place to go to seek further information on ALMAS?
We have the ALMAS website, almasworldwide.com, and that contains many stories about ALMAS, and also the various projects that we're supporting. Can I give you one little verse that really inspires me to be generous? It goes like this: "O giving in giving till giving again, till the angel sees you through. But never stop giving till the master stops giving to you. For what you give away you keep, what you keep you lose, and when you're good to others, you're best to yourself, and you're best to the Lord and our Blessed Lady."
Father Brian, thank you for coming to our studio today and sharing with us the wonderful ministry of ALMAS Worldwide. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of The Conversation. Please join us next time when again I'll be speaking with people involved in amazing ministries here in Ireland and beyond.